when you come into a room, you go to the back. The churches, they used to tell you to go to the back. So we come to the front. And you come down, and that's good too. We level up, huh? No, just finish. Thank you.
Okay, our question, thank you for that, by the way. Fantastic exercise. What was our number 2 question? I believe it was, you were here 3, 4, and 5 were over here, that's correct.
Thank you for the presentation. I have one question. What was Africa called before it was called Africa? And I have another statement. The academic things are fabulous, but we're going to have to develop an economy. We should have listened to Dorothy.
I say, anyone want to respond to that, or go to, what was Africa called before Africa? One of the 1,000 names that we could choose from?
Keep it alive.
Is that one working?
Yeah, okay, so there's numerous names we can call it, right? We know that Dr. Ben called it Al-Kibulan, right? We also know that at times it was called, you have Kemet, you have Nubia, you have Tamari, you have Tasedi, you have, you know, it depends on who you ask, what scholars. Some people say it's called Africa, like Kabe, the Soho, and Africa. There's so much, but the thing, the key piece is to go and do the research. Read Dr. Ben's book, read anything by Dr. Clark. I mean, really just reading more than the books that you're given in these schools, right? Because a powerful people will never teach a powerless people how to take their power. That's what Dr. Clark said, right? Yeah, it is important we find out what Africa is, but it's also important that we come up with one identity for ourselves. Because as long as we're trying to search for identity, we can't organize. Why can't we organize? Because everybody wants to call themselves something they're not, right? Whatever you call yourself should give you name, language, and place of origin. So there's no Negro land, there's no Latino land, there's none of those. There's no black land. But if you're Chinese, you got your name, you're a Chinese person, where's your culture? Chinese. Your language, you speak Chinese, whether it's Mandarin or Cantonese, right? That gives you your name, language, and place of origin. If we call ourselves Africans today in this context, it will give yourselves name, language, and place of origin. Africa has over 2,000 languages. The average West African speaks 7 languages. We should all be speaking 7 languages or more. But we still need to have a unifying language too. If you understand that, say Ashe.
Ashe.
I hope that's...
So, I want to support that and just add this piece. I don't just want Africa. I want all the places where Africans are. So you have groups like the Republic of New Africa that was saying that Africans in the U.S. should get 5 states. And I'm like, the amount of Africans that we could total up in the 5 states would be less than 1 country in South America for the Africans, in Brazil, Colombia, so-called Panama, so-called Venezuela, all these other different places, right? So why not 5 countries, why not 5 continents? Like, our focus on Africa itself takes away our focus of what we are and who we are in the world. Secondly, the land has a name for itself, and until we learn how to call the land by its name, we won't learn how to communicate with the land. So in the discussion of talking about what sovereignty is, African people around the globe, first of all, Europeans haven't been able to define themselves as people yet. The way that Africans describe ourselves as people is very different than how Europeans describe people. There are folks that bury their umbilical cords, placenta, at birth in the land to say that we are birthed from the land. There are people that define and describe themselves as coming up from the land. Literally, we were born out of the earth. And then in death, they are buried back into the earth. The mother is the womb, the mother is the garden. We grow, we die, we return to the earth. These are very different conversations. So when we talk about African people, I don't want to just focus on one continent, but one idea of how we exist and coexist in the world. We do know that existence under European, Arab conditions is non-existence for African people.
I'm very interested about what you said about post-traumatic slavery syndrome. But my question is how to be an African? Because all what we know now is what the Western used to do for the Africans. But nobody learned us how to become Africans. No, because we just learned how to become Western people. No, but not African. In a time, we were Africans. But now, the only thing we have is our color and our mentality as Africans. But nobody learned us how to become Africans.
So thank you very much for that question.
Brother, 1 second, we have an announcement. This is, after the session is over, we have an announcement. So don't anybody go anywhere, if you could hold on. Did one of y'all want to respond to that?
Sure.
Okay.
And all of us could respond to that in different ways, in similar ways. So thank you very much for that question. How do we be African? There's just a few things that would allow us to start that process of re-Africanization, right? The one thing is connecting with people in harmonious ways. So looking to establish collaborative relationships between people so that we relate to each other as people is first. The second piece is honoring the ancestors who provided for healthy living of African people. We get them two things down, we can re-Africanize ourselves. So if we forgot everything in the world, there's one thing that we would know is that people came before us. And since there are people that came before us, we know those folks are our connection. So the question then becomes how far, and I think Brother Kemet articulated this lively, right? Not just academically, but livingly. If we expand our understanding of history back into time in perpetuity, we will understand who we are as source people. And that's where I say that connection to the land is real key. So then it comes into what are our agricultural systems? How do we honor women? How do we honor children? Those basic things will start to define what healthy living is for African people, right? So there are a number of things that we could pull out, but some basic things like agricultural systems so that we can be sedentary in the environments that we live in. So the question of how do we become African? Those Africans that I described in Suriname never lost any of the things that they brought with them. And they are fighting now to retain them in Suriname under the threat of globalization, under the threat of younger generations wanting to experience the urban life, right? The other piece I would say is go to war. Like physically, we need to go to war. We have war being waged upon us. I don't know if we are physically in the war yet. You ever see somebody get slapped up and they just don't respond? They're not in a fight, they're getting beat up. We haven't yet talked about what the resistance looks like in this moment. And, you know, with time permitting, and this will be an ongoing conversation, so hopefully we can continue that.
Can I just add a little to the, I think we really, the Western education tries to convince us that we're not African, but we're more African than we can possibly imagine. The stuff we're doing is still very African. Every time a sister is like, I'm gonna go to the bathroom and brings 4 or 5 other sisters with her, that's very African, all right? When women, have you ever seen women, it's called an mbongi in the Congo, but when women do each other's hair, that's extremely African. How they talk to each other, how they relate to each other, that's very African. We're people of rhythm, we're people of timing. We still have that rhythm and timing. We're people of great stories, we still have those great stories. We've been trying to convince ourselves, like Malcolm used to tell us, it's like we're trying to convince ourselves that we're more American than we are African, but we can't hide it. It's just like somebody who wants to perm their hair. 2 weeks, Africa come right back up again, right in the front. And in the back, you can't get rid of Africa. Africa is what makes you beautiful, it's what makes you strong. If you